The Arctic wind howled through the narrow valleys of Alaska's Brooks Range as Marcus Blackwood tracked the strange lights he'd been following for 3 days. As one of Earth's most accomplished wilderness survival experts, he'd seen plenty of unusual phenomena in his 15 years of exploration, but nothing quite like this. The lights moved with purpose, leaving behind traces that defied natural explanation, crystalline formations that seemed to grow from nothing, and perfectly circular patches of melted snow despite the sub-zero temperatures. Marcus's scientific background told him he was witnessing something unprecedented, while his military training screamed that he was being watched. He wasn't wrong on either count. On the morning of the 4th day, as the aurora borealis painted the pre-dawn sky in sheets of green and purple, Marcus found himself face to face with something impossible. The being stood nearly 7 feet tall, its silvery skin reflecting the auroral light in hypnotic patterns. Its four-fingered hands held no weapons, but the advanced suit it wore left no doubt about its technological superiority. Marcus Blackwood, the alien spoke, its voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to dance between frequencies. "I am Sentinel Varana of the Stellar Assembly. You have been chosen." Marcus maintained his composure, years of special forces training kicking in. "Chosen for what?" "To prove humanity's worth," Varana replied, taking a step forward. Her movements were liquid grace, yet Marcus could sense the coiled strength beneath her ethereal appearance. "For 3 days, you've tracked me while I studied you. No other human has managed to follow my trail for more than a few hours." "I'm guessing this isn't a coincidence," Marcus said, noting how the alien suit seemed to shift and adapt to the brutal cold. "You wanted to be followed." Varana's expression changed in a way Marcus couldn't quite interpret. "The Stellar Assembly seeks exceptional individuals from emerging species. Those who demonstrate remarkable abilities become candidates for genetic advancement programs. You're looking for breeding stock," Marcus stated bluntly, earning what he could have sworn was a laugh from the alien. "Crude, but not entirely inaccurate. We seek partners who can contribute to the evolution of all species. Your tracking skills, survival instincts, and analytical mind make you an ideal candidate." Marcus processed this information, aware that every word exchanged could have implications for all of humanity. "And if I'm not interested?" "Then you walk away," Varana said simply. "We do not force participation. But know that this opportunity comes once in a generation. Your acceptance or refusal will influence humanity's path to the stars." A gust of wind brought the temperature plummeting further, but neither human nor alien moved. Marcus studied Varana, noting the subtle signs of appreciation in her posture, the way she catalogued his movements, his adaptations to the cold, his strategic positioning that kept him aware of all possible escape routes. "What exactly would these trials involve?" he asked, his curiosity warring with caution. "3 challenges," Varana explained, her voice carrying a hint of approval at his question. "Physical prowess, intellectual adaptability, and spiritual resonance. Success would grant you, and by extension, humanity, access to knowledge and opportunities beyond your current understanding. And failure? Returns you home with your memories of this encounter intact, but no proof of its occurrence." Varana moved closer, her height forcing Marcus to look up. "Though based on my observations, failure seems unlikely for you." Marcus felt the weight of the moment. His decisions here could impact humanity's future in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. Yet something in Varana's manner, the respect with which she treated him despite her obvious technological superiority, suggested this was more than a simple test. "Before I decide," he said carefully, "I need to understand something. Why this way? Why not approach our governments directly?" Varana's features softened. "Because true character is revealed in isolation, away from the influence of politics and societal pressures. Your actions these past days showed us who you are, Marcus Blackwood. Not who you pretend to be, not who others expect you to be, but who you are at your core." The sun finally crested the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow. Marcus made his decision, knowing it would irrevocably change his life, and potentially the course of human history. "I accept," he said firmly. "When do we begin?" Varana's skin shimmered with what appeared to be pleasure. "We already have. The tracking was your first test, one you passed admirably. Are you prepared to leave Earth immediately for the remaining trials?" Marcus glanced at his survival gear, the tools that had kept him alive in the world's harshest environments. They suddenly seemed primitive compared to what lay ahead. "Just one question," he said, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Where we're going, am I dressed appropriately?" Varana's responding laugh echoed through the valley, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Fear not, Marcus Blackwood. We will provide everything you need. Though I must admit, your ability to thrive in these conditions with such basic technology is precisely why you were chosen." As a spacecraft shimmered into visibility above them, its design unlike anything in human engineering, Marcus took one last look at the Arctic wilderness. Whatever lay ahead, he knew humanity's first steps into a larger universe rested on his shoulders. The true test was just beginning. The Stellar Assembly's training facility orbited a distant gas giant, its crystalline structures capturing and refracting the light of 3 suns. Marcus stood at a viewport, taking in the alien architecture that somehow managed to be both organic and geometric. After 3 days of acclimation, he still found himself awestruck by the scale of what he was witnessing. "The first trial begins in 1 hour," Varana announced, entering the chamber. She had exchanged her environmental suit for formal attire that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. "Are you prepared?" Marcus turned from the viewport, his newly issued training suit adjusting automatically to his movements. "As ready as I'll ever be. Though I notice you're still being vague about what exactly I'm preparing for." "The trials must be faced without preconception," she explained, moving to stand beside him. "But I can tell you this, you are not the only candidate here." As if on cue, a door at the far end of the chamber slid open, revealing 3 other beings. One appeared to be composed entirely of crystalline structures, another moved like living smoke, and the third resembled a massive coral formation given consciousness. Each regarded Marcus with what he assumed was curiosity. "Meet your fellow candidates," Varana said. "Each chosen from species on the cusp of interstellar emergence. Each exceptional in their own way." The crystal being stepped forward, its voice resonating through the chamber like struck glass. "I am Arxis, of the Luminar Collective. Your species is unknown to us." "Humanity," Marcus replied, noting how the being's internal structures shifted with interest. "We're relatively new to the galactic community." "New, but fascinating," the smoke-like entity whispered, its voice carrying directly into Marcus's mind. "I am Nexus, and my people have observed yours from afar. Your adaptability is remarkable." The coral being remained silent, but Marcus felt its assessment. These weren't just fellow candidates, they were representatives of their entire species, just as he was for humanity. Varana cleared her throat, drawing their attention. "The first trial tests physical adaptation and problem-solving. You will each enter separate environmental chambers designed to push your species' limitations. Success is not measured by completion alone, but by the methods you employ." Marcus felt a familiar calm settle over him, the same feeling he got before any challenging mission. "What are the rules?" "Survive. Adapt. Overcome." Varana's eyes met his. "You have 6 hours. Use whatever means necessary, but know that brute force alone will not guarantee success." The candidates were led to their respective chambers. Marcus's resembled a massive geodesic dome, its interior shifting and changing even as he watched. Before entering, Varana caught his arm. "A word of warning," she said quietly. "The assembly values innovation over raw strength. Remember what caught our attention in the first place." With that cryptic advice, Marcus entered the chamber. Immediately, the environment transformed into a scenario that defied physics. Gravity shifted randomly, the atmosphere alternated between thick and thin, and structures appeared and disappeared without warning. Drawing on his military training, Marcus took stock of his resources, the adaptive suit, his knowledge, and his instincts. The other candidates might have evolved under different conditions, but humans had one distinct advantage: they were arguably the universe's greatest generalists. Over the next 6 hours, Marcus faced challenges that pushed the boundaries of human capability. When gravity increased tenfold, he used the environment's changing structures to create leverage systems. When the atmosphere thinned to near vacuum, he discovered his suit could be partially deconstructed and repurposed into a protective bubble. Each solution led to a new challenge, each adaptation required further innovation. Marcus lost track of time, focused entirely on survival and progress. He couldn't see the other candidates, but occasional tremors and energy pulses suggested they were facing their own trials. Finally, as Marcus was figuring out how to cross a chasm of shifting energy fields, the chamber returned to its original state. Varana stood at the entrance, her expression unreadable. "Fascinating," she said, reviewing a holographic display. "You completed fewer challenges than the others in raw numbers, but your solutions..." She shook her head in apparent amazement. "The Assembly has never seen some of these approaches." "Humans are good at thinking outside the box," Marcus replied, catching his breath. "Especially when the box is trying to kill us." "Indeed." Varana's display showed recordings of his trial. "You turned the chamber's own shifting nature against itself, creating stable patterns from chaos." Even more impressively, each solution built upon the last, showing learning and adaptation in real time. The other candidates emerged from their chambers. The crystal being, Arxis, seemed dimmer than before. Nexus's smoky form swirled with agitation, while the coral entity had noticeably changed color. "The results are clear," Varana announced. While all candidates showed exceptional capabilities, the human demonstrated something unique: the ability to not just survive chaos, but to find opportunity within it. Marcus studied his fellow candidates, noting signs of both respect and wariness in their alien expressions. He'd passed the first trial, but something told him the physical challenges were the easiest part of what lay ahead. "Rest," Varana instructed them. "The second trial begins tomorrow, and it will test more than your bodies." She turned to leave, then added, "Oh, and Marcus? The Assembly has requested detailed documentation of your problem-solving methods. It seems you've caught their attention." As the candidates were led back to their quarters, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd done more than just pass a test. He'd shown these advanced species something they hadn't expected to find in a primitive human: the capacity to turn disadvantage into advantage, to find patterns in randomness, and to adapt not just through evolution, but through sheer force of will. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Marcus had proven something vital: humanity deserved its place among the stars. The second trial began not in a chamber of physical challenges, but in what Marcus could only describe as a living library. Data streams flowed through the air like rivers of light, and holographic representations of countless civilizations flickered around them. The chamber itself seemed to pulse with accumulated knowledge. "The mind reveals what the body cannot," Varana announced to the assembled candidates. "This trial will test your species' capacity for understanding and growth. You must navigate the collected wisdom of 1,000 worlds." Marcus noticed subtle changes in his fellow candidates. Arxis's crystalline structure became more transparent, seemingly ready to absorb information. Nexus's smoky form condensed, focusing like a lens, while the coral being, who he'd learned was called Rylix, extended delicate sensory tendrils into the data streams. "Each of you will be presented with scenarios from various civilizations' histories," Varana continued. "You must understand, analyze, and propose solutions. But be warned, these are not simple puzzles. They are real challenges that shape the destiny of entire species." The air around Marcus shimmered, and he found himself immersed in the first scenario. He witnessed a civilization facing imminent destruction from a dying sun, their social structure fracturing under the pressure of limited evacuation resources. The scenario was eerily similar to challenges humanity might face in its future. While his fellow candidates processed the information through their unique physiologies, Marcus relied on humanity's greatest strength, the ability to learn from history while imagining new possibilities. He proposed a solution that combined technological innovation with social restructuring, drawing parallels to Earth's own climate crisis response. Intriguing, one of the assembly observers noted. The human approaches the problem holistically, considering both practical and social implications. Scenario after scenario tested their problem-solving abilities. Marcus found himself navigating ethical dilemmas, technological paradoxes, and cultural conflicts that spanned galaxies. What surprised him most was how often human history provided relevant insights. During a brief respite, Varana approached him privately. "You seem troubled by something." Marcus nodded, watching the data streams flow past. "These scenarios, they're not just tests, are they? They're preparing us for something specific." Varana's expression shifted to what Marcus had learned was approval. "You perceive more than you reveal." Yes, the assembly faces challenges that require fresh perspectives. The old ways of thinking no longer suffice. And that's causing conflict within the assembly itself, Marcus deduced, noting the subtle tensions among the observers. "Perceptive," Varana admitted. "Some believe emerging species should remain isolated until they achieve interstellar travel independently. Others see potential in controlled integration. Your performance here could influence that debate significantly." Before Marcus could respond, the next phase began. This time, the candidates had to work together, their diverse perspectives needed to solve increasingly complex problems. Marcus found himself acting as a bridge between different thought processes, translating concepts across species barriers. "Remarkable," Arxis commented during one collaboration. "Your species' thinking seems adaptable. You shift between concrete and abstract reasoning with unusual fluidity." "Humans are contradiction engines," Marcus explained. "We thrive on combining opposing ideas. It's messy, but effective." The final challenge presented them with an unsolvable scenario, a civilization trapped in a time loop of its own making. While the other candidates sought technical solutions, Marcus proposed something unexpected. "Sometimes the solution isn't to solve the problem," he argued, "but to help the civilization accept and adapt to their new reality. Turn the loop into an opportunity for growth rather than a prison." His response sparked intense debate among the assembly observers. Marcus caught fragments of their discussion: unprecedented approach, challenges fundamental assumptions, potential implications for the Nexus protocol. As the trial concluded, Marcus noticed a clear divide forming among the observers. Some regarded him with what seemed like hope, others with obvious concern. Varana's expression remained neutral, but her posture suggested satisfaction. "The second trial has concluded," she announced. "Each candidate has demonstrated remarkable capabilities, but in uniquely different ways. The assembly will need time to process the implications." Later, in his quarters, Marcus received an unexpected visit from Nexus. The smoky being's form swirled with what Marcus had learned to recognize as agitation. "Your solutions troubled many in the assembly," Nexus communicated directly to his mind. "They fear human unpredictability. Yet others see it as exactly what our collective civilizations need." "Change usually makes people uncomfortable," Marcus replied. "Even advanced aliens, apparently." "Indeed." Nexus's form shifted thoughtfully. "The final trial approaches, but be warned, forces within the assembly move to ensure certain outcomes. Your success threatens long-held beliefs about species development." After Nexus departed, Marcus stood at his viewport, watching the gas giant storms swirl below. He understood now that these trials were more than tests, they were catalysts for change in an ancient system that had grown too rigid, too predictable. Tomorrow's final trial would determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. As he prepared for rest, Marcus couldn't help but smile at the irony. He'd come to prove humanity's worth, only to find that their greatest strength might be their ability to shake up the established order of the cosmos. The real question was whether the assembly was ready for that kind of change. Marcus woke to flashing emergency lights and a station-wide vibration that felt wrong on every level. His military instincts kicked in before his eyes fully opened, and he was moving toward the door when Varana burst in. "We have a security breach," she announced, her formal demeanor replaced by battlefield focus. "The conservative faction has made their move. They're trying to stop the final trial," Marcus deduced, quickly donning his adaptive suit. "What's their play?" "They've activated ancient security protocols, claiming the trials have been compromised." Varana's skin pulsed with agitation. "They're attempting to quarantine all candidates and purge the trial data." A distant explosion rocked the station. Marcus steadied himself against the wall, noting how Varana's combat stance mirrored his own. "Where are the other candidates?" "Arxis and Rylix have been secured by their respective observers." "Nexus." She paused, her expression darkening. "Nexus may have been involved in the breach." Marcus processed this betrayal while checking the station's layout on his suit's display. "They're not just trying to stop the trials, are they? This is a power play within the assembly." Perceptive as always, Varana moved to the door, checking the corridor. The trial results suggested that emerging species might be more advanced in certain ways than the assembly anticipated. Some found this troubling. Another explosion, closer this time. Marcus's tactical assessment was grim. "They'll try to erase all evidence of the trials, including the candidates. Can't have proof that their precious hierarchy isn't as absolute as they claim." "The assembly chamber," Varana said suddenly. "If we can reach it, broadcast the trial results to all member species." She left the implications hanging. "They couldn't cover it up," Marcus finished. "But I'm guessing getting there won't be easy." Varana's laugh held a warrior's edge. "The chamber is protected by defense systems even I can't override. We'd need to." She stopped, staring at Marcus with sudden intensity. "We'd need to think like humans." Marcus grinned, already formulating plans. "Good thing you've got one handy. Those defense systems, they're based on assembly technology, right? Traditional approaches?" "Yes, why?" "Because sometimes the best way through advanced security is to use primitive methods they never considered." He pointed to the environmental control panel. "Your people mastered gravity manipulation eons ago. When's the last time any of you had to climb?" Understanding dawned in Varana's eyes. "The maintenance shafts. They're not protected because no assembly species would consider using such basic routes." "Exactly. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." Marcus was already moving to the panel, his survival training shifting to focus on this new kind of wilderness. "We'll need to move fast. Your conservatives might be advanced, but I'm betting they're predictable." They entered the maintenance system just as security forces breached the residential sector. What followed was a race through the station's circulatory system, with Marcus and Varana using a combination of his primitive survival skills and her advanced knowledge to stay ahead of their pursuers. "Your species," Varana commented as they navigated a particularly narrow passage, "continues to surprise. Most would panic in this situation." "Humans thrive in chaos," Marcus replied, helping her over a power coupling. "It's not just about surviving, it's about adapting, improvising, finding opportunities others miss." They emerged into a secondary processing chamber, only to find Nexus waiting with several assembly security officers. The smoky being's form writhed with what might have been regret. The old order must be preserved, Nexus projected. Your species represents too great a variable. That's what you're afraid of? Marcus challenged, noting potential tactical advantages in the chamber's layout. That we might show there's more than one way to advance? That your carefully ordered universe might have to adapt? You don't understand the chaos that would result, one of the officers declared. Our system has maintained peace for millennia. Peace through stagnation isn't peace at all, Varana countered, moving subtly into a fighting stance. It's just death in slow motion. What followed was a battle that pitted advanced technology against human ingenuity and Varana's combat expertise. Marcus used the environment itself as a weapon, creating cascading system failures that confused the security forces' targeting systems. Varana's movements were poetry in violence, her ancient combat training amplified by Marcus's unpredictable tactics. They fought their way through the chamber, Marcus's understanding of basic physics turning the assembly's own advanced systems against them. Nexus's attempts to outmaneuver them failed against strategies no advanced being would consider, proving that sometimes the simplest solution was the most effective. The chamber entrance, Varana called out as they reached a massive doorway. But the security locked down. Marcus studied the control panel, then the door's structure itself. You said the assembly mastered energy manipulation thousands of years ago. When's the last time any of you needed to understand basic mechanics? With that, he began removing panels, exposing the door's fundamental operating system. What the assembly saw as an impenetrable energy barrier, he saw as a complex but ultimately physical mechanism. Sometimes, the most advanced security could be bypassed by understanding its simplest components. As they worked to breach the final barrier, Marcus realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their physical capabilities. It was their ability to see past advancement to the basic principles that underpinned everything. Sometimes, moving forward required understanding where you'd been. The assembly chamber waited beyond the door, and with it the chance to change the course of multiple civilizations. But as Marcus and Varana prepared for their final push, both understood that they'd already proven something vital. True advancement came not from rejecting the past or fearing the future, but from finding ways to bridge both. The real trial was about to begin. The assembly chamber was a cathedral of light and technology, its vast dome reflecting the gas giants' swirling storms above. As Marcus and Varana burst in, dozens of alien representatives turned in surprise, their various forms shifting in agitation at this unprecedented interruption. This chamber is sealed during crisis protocols, one of the assembly leaders announced, their crystalline form pulsing with authority. How did you breach our defenses? The same way humanity will continue to surprise you, Marcus declared, moving to the central platform. By remembering that the most advanced solution isn't always the best solution. Varana stepped forward, her stance both respectful and defiant. Honored assembly, we bring evidence of corruption within our ranks. The trials have been compromised, not by the candidates, but by those who fear what they represent. Security forces began pouring into the chamber, led by Nexus and several conservative faction leaders. Marcus noted with interest that Arxis and Rylix were being held under guard, but their postures suggested they were far from defeated. The human speaks truth, Arxis's crystalline voice resonated through the chamber. We witnessed attempts to suppress trial results that challenged existing hierarchies. The chamber erupted in debate, various species communicating in their unique ways. Marcus used the confusion to access the central platform's controls, his fingers flying over the alien interface as Varana covered him. Even now, he demonstrates the very qualities they fear, Rylix observed, their coral structure gleaming. Adapting, understanding, refusing to be bound by conventional limitations. That's exactly the problem, one of the conservative leaders argued. Uncontrolled advancement threatens the stability we've maintained for millennia. Marcus looked up from the controls, his voice cutting through the chaos. Is it stability you've maintained, or stagnation? Your own trial scenarios prove that the greatest threats come not from chaos, but from the inability to adapt to change. The chamber's displays suddenly came to life, showing recordings from all 3 trials. The assembly watched as each candidate faced their challenges, but it was humanity's unconventional approaches that drew the most reaction. Look at your own history, Marcus continued, gesturing to the data streams. Every species here advanced not through careful adherence to established patterns, but through innovation, through willingness to embrace new ideas. The humans' words carry wisdom, a previously silent assembly elder spoke, their energy form flickering thoughtfully. Perhaps it is we who have failed the trial, not them. Varana moved to stand beside Marcus, her presence both protective and proud. The trials were meant to test emerging species' readiness for galactic civilization. Instead, they revealed our own prejudices and fears. The conservative faction leader stepped forward, their form radiating skepticism. And what would you propose? That we abandon eons of carefully maintained order? No, Marcus replied, his voice firm but understanding. That we learn to bridge the gap between order and progress. Your civilization's greatest achievements came from combining wisdom with innovation. Why stop now? He gestured to his fellow candidates. Look at what we've all demonstrated. Arxis showed how traditional knowledge can be applied in revolutionary ways. Rylix proved that adaptation doesn't mean losing one's core identity. Even Nexus, despite their actions, demonstrated the importance of questioning established beliefs. And what did humanity demonstrate? The elder asked, though their tone suggested they already knew the answer. That sometimes the path forward requires looking back. That strength comes not from rejecting the past or fearing the future, but from finding ways to unite both. Marcus paused, looking at each assembly member in turn. We showed that true advancement comes from understanding both where you've been and where you're going. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. It was Varana who finally broke the silence, her voice carrying the weight of revelation. The final trial was never about the candidates, she announced. It was about us. About whether the assembly could recognize and adapt to change when it presented itself. The elder's energy form brightened in what seemed like approval. Perhaps it is time for the assembly to evolve. To remember that the same qualities that brought us to the stars, curiosity, adaptability, courage, should not be forgotten once we reach them. Over the next several hours, the assembly debated and finally voted. The conservative faction's attempt to suppress the trials was condemned, and a new era of cooperation between established and emerging species was proposed. As the formal proceedings concluded, Marcus found himself standing with Varana at the same viewport where his journey had begun. So, he said, watching the gas giant storms below, what happens now? Varana's skin shimmered with what he'd learned to recognize as joy. Now, Marcus Blackwood, you become humanity's first official representative to the Stellar Assembly. That is, unless you'd prefer to return to tracking lights in the Arctic? Marcus laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. I think I've found something more interesting to track. He turned to face her, his expression serious. We're going to change things, aren't we? We already have, she replied, her hand finding his. Your people have a saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Today, humanity didn't just take a step, they helped an entire galactic civilization remember how to dance. Outside the viewport, the 3 suns of this distant system began to align, creating a spectacle of light and color that seemed to herald a new age. Humanity had not just proven their worth to the stars, they had helped the stars remember their own worth as well. The true journey was just beginning.